This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have one of the most influential analysts in fantasy sports. He's the co-founder of Establish the Run. It's the one and only Adam Levitan. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Big fan of your content. I've had a chance to see you speak at FSGA. You're always delivering great wisdom and insight in your podcast and in your content. And it's certainly an appropriate time to have you on here just to say congratulations on the 5-year anniversary for Establish the Run. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. We're not out of business yet, so we'll see how it goes the next 5 years.
Well, for listeners that may be unfamiliar with your work, what is Establish the Run?
Yeah, this around 2015 when DFS first started getting into that a lot, and then had some other things going on in 2019. Timing was right for me and Evan Silva to start a site, and originally we were just covering NFL. It's grown to cover a lot of sports, and basically at the projection level, I think, we've kind of grown to a reputation of having the best rankings and the best projections for NFL, NBA, golf, MMA, college football. So it's kind of evolved. And when, normies ask me what we do, I say that we're a sports data site at the B2C level. But people who are in the industry, I think, understand a little bit more clearly what we do in terms of trying to get as exact and up to date and finely tuned as we can on projection for every single player in every single game.
Right on. And obviously, shout out to Evan Silva, your partner in crime. Evan is he's on many people's Mount Rushmore when it comes to fantasy football content. What are your thoughts on riding this wave with Evan and obviously on his recent health journey and everything that he's doing to better himself?
Yeah, I don't think that people realize how hard it is to do what Evan does. I mean, he is an actual savant with analyzing football, not with models, not with math, with literally just reading and watching and understanding how the game is played, both the NFL and fantasy. It's, can't be replicated by math and modeling. And what we try to do is try to instill some of Evan's takes that may not be apparent and then try to slide that out to math. So, in our season-long rankings, for example, we obviously have the base projection for Christian Watson, and then we have another layer we can layer in ceiling. And so, Evan wants to be really high on Christian Watson this year, for example, and we can start layering in some more ceiling outcomes or a higher likelihood that Christian Watson hits his ceiling outcome into, and that flows through to the rankings also. So just incredibly valuable. And I'm on the health stuff. I'm on the big time health kick too. And I'm so proud of him for doing what he did publicly, because there's so many people that are out there struggling with health and not making it a priority. And if we have any influence, it's good to do it on something that actually really matters a lot, like health.
Yeah, it is really cool, like you said, for him to do it publicly and have, he's obviously got a ton of support in the industry and beyond. So it's really cool to to be vocal about that and bring some light to the grind. There's a lot of people that just that every single day it's the grind of content creation and content research and analysis that can definitely take a toll on your health if you don't prioritize it. So it's a great message for sure. And I'm obviously thrilled for Evan and for you as well. It's awesome to hear. Now, obviously, one thing that is very clear is that you have a passion for fantasy sports and the thrill of strategy behind it all. Were sports a big part of your childhood growing up? And who were your favorite teams and players across the sports spectrum?
Yeah, I would say I grew up in Northern Virginia, so we were all the DC sports fans. At that time, there was no such thing as the Nationals. I was an Orioles fan, but at that time they were called the Bullets, not the Wizards. They were called the Redskins, not the Commanders, and they're still the Capitals. So those were kind of the three big ones. I never got super passionate about following sports. about following sports for the sake of the teams. I wasn't like heartbroken, when the Bullets didn't win the championship or whatever. But I followed pretty close and rooted for, I would say the team that I rooted for most was probably that Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, Rod Strickland, Calbert Chaney Bullets team, which never really got over the hump, but played Michael Jordan's Bulls, kind of peak Bulls in round one, and had some pretty good games against them. So that's probably the one that I was most passionate about. But I was always more passionate about, trying to figure out what's going to happen more than caring about what actually happens, because I live in Virginia and I happen to be close to the Wizards or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Now, George Mirasan, was he on that squad too?
He might have been. I think he was.
I love it. Now, obviously, you got a passion for sports on just a different level when it comes to analysis and whatnot, and then also gaming. Where did the history of that come from? Once upon a time, obviously, you had a life that involved poker. What was that experience like for you?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I on the fantasy stuff first. I mean, the first time I played fantasy was that USA Today salary cap game where it was in the newspaper and they would give everyone a salary and you would call on your phone and submit your team that way, and you wouldn't know what the results were until you called back on Monday or Tuesday and they would say what place you got. I thought that was just awesome, and I remember doing that and run around my house when I was, I don't know, probably 11, 12, 13, because I was actually calling and making these teams like that. That was before really the internet was really a thing for fantasy. The internet was just too slow, like dialing up on Prodigy and stuff like that in AOL, and it was just too slow to really have a full-blown fantasy in there. So that was my first thing with fantasy. With poker, yeah, I was always playing card games with my friends, in my parents' basement. In high school, I was already playing poker semi-professionally when the poker boom happened. I turned 21 in 2003, but in the years before that, I was playing online. And then once I was 21, started playing live a lot after I graduated from college. And the games were just incredible then. Nobody knew what they were doing, including myself. But poker spent most of my 20s playing way too much poker. It was hard, I needed the money, so it was hard. I was trying to keep a light on for a career, quote unquote career in sports. And, that doesn't pay very well when it's, part-time at newspapers and websites and stuff like that. So I feel like I kind of had to play a lot of poker, but looking back, I spent way too much of my 20s in kind of dusty casinos with miserable people and stuff like that. So yeah.
I'm sure you learned a lot from that experience though. Now, I love the start of fantasy. Like for me, it was the same kind of game in sporting news, right? It was a dial-in thing, and same thing back in like 1995. And I came in first place in my division. I was hooked. I had my mom's credit card in there, and I won a ton. It was quite an experience. It definitely hooked me in fantasy. What was it initially that got you, sparked that interest in fantasy sports?
I don't know. I always just thought that first of all, I know I have a problem. I know I'm unique, but when I don't actually get reward from rooting or being right, like I just have no interest. So, I didn't see much point of being a regular sports fan. I didn't see any reward if my team won. So once you start getting into, oh, well, if I'm right, I'm actually going to win something, that was obviously really appealing to me. And I think a lot of people in our generation that kind of spoke to. And so, the ability to use my knowledge of sports to actually prove it against other people and actually win money or prizes or whatever. I mean, that was just, right up my alley.
So way back in the day, did you have like a home fantasy league? Do you have one league now that you consider like your main league?
Yeah.
Obviously, your interests are different from the average like fantasy player, obviously.
Sure. So my friends from high school, we started a league in 1997, and it's still going. Still going. I used to go to the library. I didn't have internet at my house, used to go to the library at school and get on the internet there and kind of set lineups and stuff like that. We also were doing fantasy basketball back then, which looking back was crazy because I was going to the library every day to set my team for daily changes, and the librarian definitely thought we were total degens. But yeah, that league's been going since 1997. I think the buy-in started at like $50, and now it's probably, I think we did 150 last year. So it hasn't changed that much. And yeah, it's great. It's a great way to stay in touch with people for sure.
I love the library story, because when I was in chiropractic school, like back in like around 2000 or so, 2001, I launched this league, which has been pretty special for years and years. But we spent more time, as a league collectively in school together in the library doing fantasy sports than anything else. And so I love the library stories in fantasy. When it comes to being in school, being distracted, playing fantasy with your friends, that's great. So when it comes to like pivotal moments, in your career, your timing on your journey that where you decided to pursue fantasy sports, analysis full time, can you think of anything that really triggered you?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely a few things. In 2000, I was a freshman at Penn State, and I won ESPN's overall fantasy football championship. I think there were like, I don't know, 70 or 80,000 people, and I got first. I won a trip to Disney World. They shouted me out at one of those restaurant type things. Yeah, so got the trip down there. Now, if you win that, you get like dollars and TVs, and I don't know, but back then you didn't get much. But that was super cool. I thought that I was going to be a sports reporter. I grew up reading the Washington Post every day. Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser were, just regular newspaper reporters back then. And I would read it every day. I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that. I was a journalism major at Penn State. It turned out that in order to be a good reporter, you have to talk to people and kiss a lot of ass. And, I just wasn't good at it. I just wasn't. It was more about relationships with other humans than sports. And that wasn't really it for me. I just wasn't good at it. So I started doing the fantasy thing. I mean, the biggest turning point was I had sent an email to Greg Rosenthal, who was working at RotoWorld at the time, about working at RotoWorld, and he didn't get back to me for like 6 months. I totally forgot about it. But then like 6 months after I sent it, he wrote back and was like, "Hey, we have some part-time, news blurbing available for like $8 an hour if you're interested." And I said, sure. And I guess that was the biggest turning point, because RotoWorld kind of turned into the biggest fantasy content site. Kind of when me, Evan, Wes, RotoPat, Mencio, all those guys, Rich, all those guys were all there. So that was a big turning point. And then the biggest turning point, I was, it just didn't pay that well. I was in constant arguments with NBC, who owned RotoWorld, about compensation, and I was ready to give up. I actually took the GMAT. I studied really hard for the GMAT. I was going to go to business school. And then DFS happened. And at that point, it was so close to poker. I just knew that was going to be a huge turning point for me. And yeah, that was kind of when everything changed career-wise, was when DFS became a thing in 2013, 2014 or so.
Yeah, the arrival of DFS. So what was it that hooked you? Like, just the fact that it was similar to what you were used to and your passions with poker?
It's just higher stakes. It's hard to play season long for high stakes,
Yeah.
and so, that's the thing about playing poker, DFS, or anything. Edges don't have to be huge if you can get enough volume, right? So, one thing about poker is you have to be there sitting at the table and play. On DFS was able to quickly scale faster. You can make one lineup and put it in a ton of different contests. And at that time, back then, it was obviously much easier to win. And so I knew that there'd be a lot of money in it, right? So not just for me, I mean, just in the content space, FanDuel and DraftKings were throwing around incredible amounts of money that nobody in the fantasy space had ever seen before. DraftKings had reached out, and like, at the time I didn't even realize I probably should negotiate better because I didn't realize they were dealing with like hundreds of millions of dollars of funding. But yeah, there was just more money in the industry, both for playing and for content and for analysis. I mean, if people are playing 1,000 or 5,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 a week, they're think about how much they're willing to pay for good analysis. So,
Yeah.
whereas in season long, most people are playing for 50 or 100 or 200. They're not, and rightfully so, they're not willing to pay as much. So, that was just so obvious to me, and definitely the real turning point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you're right. A lot of most fantasy consumers, they might even be playing for free, right?
Yep.
So they're in it for fun as opposed to for making money. So how much they're going to pay for draft kits and that kind of stuff. That's a good point for sure. So any misconceptions about DFS that you'd like to debunk for listeners and viewers?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think people think that you have to be some high stakes whale. There are so many low stakes contests. I mean, first of all, this was part of the regulations back in 2016. Anyone who has played, I believe, over $1 million in action or played a certain amount of games can't play any contest under $5. So, I mean, like you're not gonna be playing against the best players there. I think in NFL specifically, you don't need to have a ton of modeling background or really any modeling background or really any sophisticated math. I think everyone listening to this knows the NFL well enough. I think there's some DFS 101 things that people need to understand. But once you have that and you understand that, I don't think in NFL specifically, you're at that big of a disadvantage. Now, you're going to need a baseline of projections and ownership to understand what other people are going to do. But beyond that, I think that people shouldn't be intimidated by playing DFS, I guess, is the big thing that I would say. And that's kind of something that I hear a lot, I don't want to play against all these really sophisticated people. And that's true. There's a ton of that out there. But if you game select right, and you play in the right games and the right sports that I don't think you're at that big of a disadvantage.
Yeah, I think the one thing that holds people back is just state regulations too. I'm in Washington State. I can't even play. And it's been, this has been going on for years and years where all I want to do is play some DFS because I see, how it's a great balance with just playing regular fantasy leagues, but you also can kind of get some action when maybe your teams are going the wrong direction, right? You still get to kind of stay in tune, get the best out of the fantasy experience. By going by week to week. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully sometime it'll change for me here. Otherwise I just got to go to different states and make it happen. How about some memories when it comes to DFS victories you've had, particularly maybe a tough loss or something you've learned in an experience you've had?
Yeah. I'm more of a cash player. For those guys that don't know what that means, mostly play head-to-head, double up, stuff like that, where you're only playing against one other person or half the field gets paid out. I've tried to get better at tournaments over the last few years. Had a really good score, I guess 2 years ago, won $250K in with a Joe Burrow stack. Got second in the FanDuel Fan Championship, which was $250 buy-in. So that was the biggest score I ever had. I mean, it was incredible. I was in a hotel. It was during Christmas week. I was in a hotel in Miami with my family, and yeah, I was just sweating it. And Burrow went completely nuts. I think it was like a 500-yard, 4-touchdown game for Burrow, and then I had Mark Andrews on the other side of that game. He went nuts, and yeah, I got a signed Joe Burrow jersey and like a frame thing with the team and the standings and everything. So yeah, I'll always remember that one because that was, I've had some other, smaller scores in tournaments, 20K here, 20K there, whatever, but nothing on that scale, which obviously takes a ton of luck, but was really amazing. In terms of like bad outcomes, God, there's been so many all the time, but that's happens to everyone where one play or 1v1 is the difference between, making $100 and making 100,000. So yeah, I can't even remember off the top of my head. There's there's been so many that have really stung for sure.
You gotta block those out to move forward, right? No sense in dwelling in those experiences. Now, when it comes to establishing ETR, what was the inspiration behind Establish the Run? What were some of the biggest challenges you faced launching the platform?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was simple. Like, nobody needs any more legacy media. I don't need NBC to give me a platform. I don't need ESPN to give me a platform. I have my Twitter, I have YouTube, I have a podcast. I can reach people directly. And I actually think that a lot of people prefer to be reached directly. And so we say whatever we want. We make the decisions, whatever we want, we think is right. And then we either reap the benefit of that, which I think we should, not NBC or ESPN or whoever else is out there as a third party, and we reap the benefit of that. And if people aren't interested in what we have to say or aren't interested in the data we provide, then we're dead and that's it, And so I like that, as someone who I want it on me, I want to have personal responsibility for everything. We went out there, I think all of us were kind of frustrated. We went out there and made RotoWorld this amazing site, and we didn't really participate in any of the upsides. So that was kind of the impetus for doing it. Challenges where we have zero business experience whatsoever. We have zero software development experience whatsoever. So it's been a bumpy ride on those fronts. But I know Taylor KB from poker, and he had started a ton of businesses before, one of the smartest people that I've ever met. And he was on board to co-found with us and be kind of the business adult and let us kind of do the content and stuff like that. So yeah, that was kind of the whole impetus.
I love it. And Establish the Run, the name. How long did it take you to come up with the name? I'm sure there's a lot behind that because, back in the day, I think obviously Establish the Run was something that you guys made fun of a lot, right?
Right. And that was the whole idea, is that like it would work both ways. People who know us know that we're making fun of these boomers who think that you should be running the ball more. But then also the boomers are like, oh yeah, I like that. They should be established in the run. So it cuts both ways. We thought about a ton of names. I think, from business 101 or SEO 101, you want a short name that includes something that says what your site is about, which we don't have either of those, right? SEO bros would tell us we have the worst name ever. And maybe that's true, but we were never going to rank for SEO anyways. There's already thousands of sites that include fantasy or roto in them. So I think the name probably wasn't optimal, but it's worked and it's stuck. And yeah, I like it now.
That's great. No, I love it. How do you guys decide on the content and the features to include on the site? And is there a specific process or philosophy that you guys follow? Obviously, you've expanded into more sports and all that.
Yeah. So we all play. That's the thing. And, we all play and most of us play pretty high stakes. We know what people actually need to win. And we try to leave everything else out. Everything else is just out because we understand that I think a lot of people out there can do the work and the research and put it together, but they don't have the time. I mean, they have jobs and lives and spouses and kids. And so our job, I see it, is to figure out exactly what you need and condense it into a way that you can consume it in a way to make you competitive and win easily. So yeah, we're always playing. If I think that there's something we need, like one of the things we're rolling out this year is a season-long trade calculator. I always thought when people offer me trades in my home leagues, I'm like, damn, I don't know. This is a close one. And so we were like, you know what? Let's just build a trade calculator, and we're going to do it based on our rankings and how we view players for the rest of the year. And then, use some modeling to kind of set up the trade calculator. So yeah, stuff like that. I think if you're playing, you should know what the consumer wants. And I think it's pretty easy after that.
It makes sense. I mean, you guys, it fits the brand too. Like obviously you create content that you would want to consume to play the game that you love to play, right?
Yeah, exactly. And people always ask, oh, how do you know what to tweet or how'd your Twitter get so popular? I'm doing this research for myself because I'm playing pretty big and I'm not trying to lose my money. And if I find something that I think means it, I just tweet it. That's it. It's not some, grand plan or blueprint or anything. I find something that I would use to play fantasy and I tweet it. That's it.
Yeah, I think the authenticity of that shines through. You're definitely one that people really appreciate when it comes to just being you. Like there's not a lot of secrets behind like who that is behind the camera or behind the microphone. So
Sure.
authenticity always wins in the end. Obviously, again, congrats on the 5 years. What are the next 5 years? Where do you want to see ETR go in the next 5 years?
Good question. I think in business, a big part of it is like staying alive to see what happens next. In other words, when we started ETR, best ball was barely even a thing. I mean, barely even a thing. And now best ball is absolutely massive, and giving us, different avenues for content and revenue when there weren't there before. When we first started ETR, betting was not legal. I mean, not even close, and like if you could bet on props, they were mostly offshore and only on stars. Now you can bet on, the fourth wide receiver yardage in a game. And so we had no idea that was coming, and so we have no idea what's coming in the next 5 years. But I think stay in the game long enough to be there when something happens is for sure the right play. In terms of more direct ideas over the next 5 years, I think doubling down on NFL, NBA, and golf, we think we have pretty good edge and data there, and we're going to continue to try to build out more products and stuff like that around those sports for sure.
What do you when it comes to best ball, what do you think is the thing that has everybody so excited about?
Oh, I mean, I'm too old now to be grinding the waiver wire and trades and all that. I still love to draft, and I think a lot of people feel that way. The draft is the best part of fantasy football. The draft is the absolute stone cold best. You can do it on your phone. You can do it in 30 minutes. I do it lying in bed at night. I'll do a draft after my wife goes to sleep or something like that. I mean, it's just the absolute best. Anybody who's done it, I can't fathom people who, if you watch this show, I can't fathom that you watch this show and you don't like doing a best ball draft. I mean, it's just so fun, and you can play as small or as big as you want. Similar to DFS. I mean, DFS you can play for 25 cents, I believe, is the lowest, maybe 50 cents for an entry. In best ball, I believe you can play for $3, maybe $2, maybe less. And so there's just turn a little money into a lot, which Americans love, and yeah, it's just a no-brainer, the best.
And it is true that it helps people prepare, even if you are just a season-long player and enjoy the game. Like ripping off a bunch of best ball drafts during the off season, helps you get ready for it. And I can say again, from my perspective as a just passionate commissioner, I love the league experience and having fun with the leagues. Like that's my favorite thing. It's the live draft or just the draft alone that is the core of the experience to me in fantasy. So you're right. Drafts, there's no more of a thrill than a fantasy football draft.
Exactly.
Or fantasy, any sports draft, right?
Exactly. And like, yeah, the other thing about best ball is like it's an actual money-making venture, because you can get a ton of teams out there, and I think there's a ton of interesting strategy around it. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that it's insanely popular.
I love it. Now, Establish a Run, it's got a strong community of subscribers. What are the most rewarding interactions you've had with your audience thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to start the Discord because I thought that it would just turn into, people being angry and yelling at each other and politics and all this other nonsense and real hateful stuff. That it's actually been amazing because, the Discord is walled off to subscribers only. And so, if people are spending, our stuff is not cheap. If people are spending the kind of money that they are and they're in the Discord, a lot of them are just like really smart people. We have hired people that we met in Discord who were just subscribers. A bunch of our guys have met up with people in real life from the Discord. And so, yeah, I think anything that is not actually fantasy related that's come from ETR, the health stuff or people meeting up in real life or getting people jobs or anything has been super rewarding. And yeah, on the ETR front, just, I wanted a job in fantasy when I was in my 20s. Full-time jobs like barely existed then. We're up to 18 full-time employees now. And I think, we've created, it feels good to create like jobs that I think people really want, and so, And I think they're really good jobs. I know I'm biased, but I think they're really good jobs also. So yeah, I'd say that's probably been the most rewarding thing.
Yeah, that's great. I've talked to a lot of people that have created independent brands in the fantasy space, and the common theme is that community, right? The community that you create, right, is so much more important than the Twitterverse, right, or
Sure.
everyone else. It's that community that really kind of fuels you when it comes to really kind of getting the best out of what you're doing and moving it forward. You can't do it without that support. So it's awesome to hear about fantasy communities and discords and that kind of stuff. Now, obviously you do fun stuff with like Life with Levitan, like you do some stuff. Obviously you hit hard with ETR when it comes to content analysis, data, but you guys have some humor too, especially some of those like videos you put out periodically that are just compilations of just funny things. Like what inspires that stuff?
So, I think that everyone, not everyone, but a lot of analysis, people get drowned in it. And I think trying to not take ourselves too seriously and have fun with it is important. And people connect with it. I like the solo pod stuff took off like I could have never imagined, because I didn't think there was really anyone who thought like me out there. And there still aren't that many, but the people out there who do kind of think about things the way I do, not just gambling and not just fantasy, but kind of carrying that stuff over to life. They're passionate about it, and so I don't really feel that comfortable out in public, talking to people and meeting people. They're just not like me at all. But the people that listen to the solo pods and think our videos are funny, I mean, they are sick puppies just like I am. And it's good. It's good to know that there's other people like that out there. So yeah, I love doing the solo pod. I love the videos that our guys produce out there, because it's not making us any money, but it's just fun. It's just fun.
And you're educating people on colonoscopies and all kinds of stuff. So it's great. I love it. Love it. When it comes to your analysis, what key metrics and factors do you prioritize when it comes to developing projections and rankings?
Yeah. So this has gone beyond me at this point. We have 4 full-time data science guys. We have an incredible team of football analysis guys also. And so I think trying to combine that is really the secret sauce. You can't just be a math guy, a modeler, and you can't just be a football bro anymore. You have to be able to combine it if you want to win at the highest levels. And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, we're trying to help people that are playing in really high stakes, really competitive DFS and leagues and stuff like that. And so I think combining that is really hard to do. And it's taken an incredible effort from all our guys and an incredible capital investment to do so. But that is, to me, like the absolute no-brainer of what you have to do, and kind of what sets us apart is an ability to be able to do the math stuff at elite level and do the football stuff at elite level as well.
I love it. Now, what is your poker influence, experience with poker? How has that impacted your approach to fantasy sports?
Yeah, I think poker is just really good for life in general. It is a game of incomplete information, just like fantasy sports, just like life. I don't know what you have in the hands. I can try to figure it out. I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the NFL games, but I can try to figure it out. And just like in life, I don't know what's going to happen with something with my kids or but you try to make the best decision you can with the information that you have at the time. And once you make that decision in poker, you just kind of have to live with it. You can't dwell on it. You can look back and say, man, was this a good decision or bad decision? But the most important thing of all this is letting go of the decision after you make it. And then also thinking probabilistically. And to me, that's like what everyone should be doing in life. Everybody thinks so black and white in life, where in poker, maybe I should have raised 60% of the time and folded 40% of the time. And just like if I go look at this carton of milk and it says it's expired yesterday, well, I start thinking, well, 20% of the time I'm going to throw up, 5% of the time I'm going to be dead, 85% of the time I'm going to be fine. And so I think about that, and then I'm like, all right, I'll have a glass, and so I would think that people thinking more probabilistically about life, not black and white. There's a whole range of outcomes of how everything that happens in life can go. And I think that's just, so important to understand for anything you're playing and for life in general.
That's great. That's great. Now, what emerging trends in fantasy football do you think managers should be aware of for the upcoming season?
I think, well, I would say two things. First, at the NFL level, it's hard for me to see the NFL allowing such a low scoring season again. I mean, there was so much bad quarterback play. There were so many low scoring games. There were a ton of penalties. I could see rules, instructions to the referees to allow more scoring. I mean, period. So I think that's one thing to keep an eye on. Obviously, the NFL is shifting towards more passing. The rules have allowed that, more like 7-on-7 type stuff. One of the reasons that wide receivers, have kind of become king in fantasy football. From a fantasy perspective, I don't know how it's going to go in home leagues. What's going on right now in best ball is completely out of control with rookies and wide receivers. And so many people are playing best ball now that I think some of that's going to carry over to home leagues. I'm going to be real curious how the ADP shakes out in home leagues where, you see stuff like Josh Jacobs going in round 5. I could see home league people being like, what are you talking about? Josh Jacobs is the feature back for the Packers. He should be going in round 1, and I'm sympathetic to that. I think that people are going to have to develop strategy. It'll be more important than ever in your home league to understand what your opponents are going to do. Because if I can get James Cook or Josh Jacobs in round 5 or 6, like you can in best ball, that should alter your strategy massively. But my suspicion is that in home leagues, Derrick Henry is going to go in round 1. Saquon's going to go in round 1. Josh Jacobs is going to go in round 2. You know what I mean? So it'll be more important than ever, I think, for fantasy people to understand what your opponents are going to do.
It'll be interesting too. As you point out, with the growth of best ball, like how much that influences the major host platforms when it comes to the rankings, like how much, each year it's going to grow into like, this is best ball setting the rankings. Is that what you kind of expect?
I don't think so. It depends what league you're in, but I don't think so, because the default people are going to anchor to the default rankings on these sites anyways. And I already looked at, ESPN default rankings, and I mean, it's not even close to best ball. I mean, not even, in the same ballpark. So no, I don't think that we're going to be at a point yet where most home leagues are overly influenced by best ball, which if people are going to take a ton of running backs, then that the strategy of hero RB or zero RB to me makes a ton of sense if they're going to overpay even by a little bit at running back.
I love it. What's been the most rewarding part of this experience in the fantasy sports industry for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would be doing this stuff anyways. I know I would. I would be still get up every morning and read everything about NFL, because I know that I'd be doing best ball drafts, and I know that I would, during the season, look at how every player was used in every game, because I know I'd be playing DFS. So I get to do this as, a job. And so that's pretty amazing. And I'm not unaware that most people go to work every day and don't like their job. I mean, that's just the truth. I mean, most people are like, shit, I got to go to work again. This sucks. I can't wait for the weekend. I can't wait for Monday. Sunday, I can't wait to go to work. So that's a real something to be grateful for, I think.
For sure. I think, obviously if you love what you do, it makes a huge difference on the day to day and moving forward. Obviously, you'll want to find things that you're passionate about and figure out ways to I guess, make money around them. It
Sure.
obviously is the best of best, right? Best of both worlds for sure. Obviously, let's talk a little bit about the fantasy football community. Obviously, there's a lot of great people. And, you and I have both met a ton of people over the years. How much have the relationships and friendships you've created in the fantasy sports community meant to you over the years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not great with human interaction. I know people think I'm joking when I say that. I'm really not. But I have met a bunch of people. I mean, Peter Jennings is still one of my best friends. We live, 15 minutes away from each other or so now. He's, if you guys don't know him, one of the most successful DFS players ever, and probably like the first, DFS celebrity or whatever, just because he was winning so much. Obviously Evan and Taylor and all these guys at ETR, I really love. In terms of like just random people from Twitter, I wish that it was in me to like go out and meet people, but yeah, it's not me as much. People think that it's me because they think I'm like super outgoing from the podcast and stuff, but in real life, I'm really not.
Well, I mean, again, obviously, I'm sure you met people with like FSGA and that kind of
Sure.
stuff. Any part of you ever interested in going to the Fantasy Football Expo and getting uncomfortable for a moment?
Sure. I was so uncomfortable at FSGA also, like so uncomfortable. I've never been to the expo. It's such a hard time. I'm so busy in August/September trying to get everything set up. So I don't have any plans unless they change the date to go to the expo, but it does look like it'd be a ton of fun. I know some of our guys went out there last year and everything. So yeah, they said it was super cool.
Yeah, it's a good event for sure. Now let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll just throw out some questions. Let me know what first comes to mind. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry at this time?
I think what I enjoy most, probably always, has been interpreting news. And it used to be finding news, and I still think that I'm able to find news that other people don't find, but so many people have access to all the news now, and there's so much out there. It's interpreting it that I think I enjoy the most. I just saw today, some beat writer from the Cardinals was like, Trey Benson might be behind Michael Carter. And I was like, and people are going to run with this and they're going to stop drafting Trey Benson, and to me, I find that stuff super interesting, trying to kind of figure out what's true and what's not from the quote unquote fantasy news.
Yeah, solving the riddles, right? And uncovering the mystery behind the news out there. I love that. It's a great answer. What's your favorite type of content to create?
Probably the solo pod. The solo pod, for those guys who don't know, I talk like very hardcore about DFS for the first kind of part of the show. Look back at the week, try to make takeaways, talk about how I did and everything that I did the previous week in DFS. And then the second half, answer questions from people. But it got to a point where people were asking about life. They weren't asking about fantasy. All the questions that were coming in were, Adam, my girlfriend did this. What should I do? Or, I'm trying, I have all these germaphobe things, and people were asking me how to avoid, germs in public bathroom, all kinds of crazy stuff, stuff. And I try to be funny with it. It's kind of like a stand-up comedy type thing, but focused on fantasy and trying to live life in a way that is kind of more analytical than maybe most people would talk about it. So I've been doing that for, God, I don't know, 9 or 10 years. And it's probably my favorite thing and one of the more popular things that I do for sure.
That's awesome. What's the most surprising or unexpected piece of advice you've received in your fantasy sports career?
Yeah. I think there's been so many people that have given me really good advice. I think, the general quote that I've come back to that I made mistakes on early, a lot of people say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. That is not the right advice for me. Once I kind of was like, I just want to focus on one thing and that's it. I think that's when things started to really go well, both for playing and for business stuff. And so, the other quote, the opposite of that quote is put all your eggs in one basket and watch it. I don't know if we can curse on here, but watch it really effing close. So put all your eggs in one basket and watch it really effing close. And that is a much better saying for me. So I don't even know whose quote that is, but that's one that stuck with me. And I think that's what it was best for me. And so the basket, it means all like the same thing: ETR, playing DFS, and doing the podcast and stuff like that. That's all the same basket, and just watch it really close.
It's like going all in, right? with the pot. I love it. As a sports fan, I mean, obviously, I think I know where this answer is going to go. But are you able to enjoy sports as just a fan?
Not really. And I understand that I have like mental problems, but I just when the Broncos lose and people are like upset or it messes up their mood or their day or they're mad about it, it doesn't compute with me. I don't understand. It doesn't, and I understand that I am in the stone cold minority there. I just don't get it. I don't get why people care so much about what guys who you have no idea who they are. You make no decisions whatsoever. If they do well, you're not rewarded in any way. People hate this take. I mean, people really hate this take, and I understand I'm in the minority, but yeah, I just don't see it.
No, it brings back to what you said in the very beginning. What are you going to get out of it? It's true. Like your Denver Broncos lose. Like you didn't lose anything. I mean, I can say that I'm a massive sports fan, and so I do get involved and get hyped up and get affected one way or another.
Sure.
But obviously, most people do. But
right.
But when you describe how you feel, it's like I think about my wife. Like she's like. She doesn't care about my Seahawks. She doesn't care about my Mariners. She doesn't care about the misery of the Mariners losing every single season for the history of their franchise. But it's funny that someone can be so passionate about the game.
Yeah.
But I get it. Understanding how you operate, it actually makes sense. It totally makes sense, and I love that. And again, I think that falls in lines with your authenticity. Like you are who you are how you are, and it is what it is. I love it.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
What are your favorite hobbies and activities outside of gaming and fantasy sports?
Yeah, playing competitive sports myself. I mean, my favorite thing to do is I've gotten into all these very high stakes or mid to high stakes tennis bets. And, we play 2-on-2, 3-on-3 basketball most mornings. I try to play tennis 3 times a week. I had a really big match against Brandon Adams. I hired a coach. I hired a trainer. I had a girl who stretched me. And that like feeling like I'm a professional athlete playing for money is like my favorite thing in the world to do. So I'm always playing sports and training and looking to bet on them. And yeah, if anyone out there wants action on a tennis match, I mean, that is my favorite thing in the world to do. I didn't even like grow up playing tennis or anything. I grew up playing basketball, but now I really love playing like the one-on-one, both strategy and physicality of tennis at like a little bit higher level. Like I'm not good or anything, but a little bit higher level is my favorite thing to do.
Have you dabbled with pickleball, or are you one of the tennis players that despises pickleball players?
I've played. I don't get the same physical, like playing a 3-hour tennis match when it's 100 degrees. I played Brandon last year on the roof of the Cosmopolitan in Vegas. It was like asphalt. It was like 120 degrees. Up there, there's no shade. That made me feel alive. Like that was like pushing your body. I couldn't fathom being pushed like that in pickleball. But I'm gonna be 42 in September. I don't know how much longer I have to play 3-hour matches on the roof of the Cosmopolitan. So I definitely could see myself getting into pickleball and later on.
Nice. How about an all-time favorite TV show? What's your favorite?
Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean, not even close. It's really scary because I watch Larry on that show and he reminds me so much of myself, which is not a compliment to myself. I mean, everybody hates him. He's got all these, but yeah, like the way he interacts socially is reminds me so much of myself. And it's the best show in the history of television in terms of comedies like that by far. In terms of dramas, the miniseries Band of Brothers would probably be my favorite of drama type stuff, but that's only a mini series. It's only, I believe, 13 episodes.
Yeah. How about an all-time favorite movie?
All-time favorite movie. There's so many cliche ones. I would say I think that I would probably go with one of the Judd Apatow comedies, Knocked Up, 40-Year-Old Virgin. Those would probably be 2 that, like, if they come on TV, I watch it every time. Obviously, the cliche ones from our generation, like Big Lebowski, Casino, stuff like that. I like too, but yeah, underrated one, Alpha Dog with Justin Timberlake. If you guys haven't seen Alpha Dog, yeah, check it out.
Nice. How about a sports movie? You got a favorite sports movie?
So many. Oh my God. I love sports movies. I would say Hoosiers. I can't stop crying when I watch Hoosiers because it reminds me so much of my high school basketball experience in a way. It just like hits home so hard. I love The Natural. I think there's a ton of really good Kevin Costner ones. Tin Cup, Field of Dreams. All those kind of older school sports movies I really love. The ones that I don't like are the corny ones like Friday Night Lights and all the more the more modern ones where, it's like, oh, the starting quarterback got hurt and the backup comes in and he's nervous and then he gets the girl and he does great. I can't take that, but the kind of the more mythical ones I really do like.
That's good. Yeah, Field of Dreams, phenomenal, of course. But bringing up Tin Cup, bringing up The Natural, I can really appreciate those. Those are great movies. What's your stance on like Major League?
Yeah, I think Major League's funny. I wouldn't consider it one of the best sports movies ever, but I definitely think it's funny. Yeah.
Nice. How about all-time favorite musician or band or artist?
Yeah, The Band. Like that's their name, The Band. If you guys haven't, I'm sure you guys know their songs, but you might not have known their name is The Band. The Band and the Allman Brothers would probably be the two that I listen to most. And when I'm in the car, I listen to the Grateful Dead channel on Lithium some and on Sirius some, and I also listen to Lithium, which most people are probably younger than me, but Lithium plays like all 90s grunge music, which kind of brings me back to kind of growing up in high school and stuff, which is cool.
There you go. Yeah, I'm a Seattle guy, so I had all that stuff around here for sure. What's your favorite food item and go-to food item and favorite beverage?
Yeah, food is no brainer. I have an addiction to pasta. I make this linguine with in an olive oil, a light olive oil type sauce with some scallops and vegetables like broccoli, tomatoes. Peppers in there. I mean, I could eat that every day. I mean, every single day. So that's no doubt there. That's my favorite. Favorite beverage is water. I swear, people don't believe me. I feel incredible. I drink an insane amount of water, and I feel incredible when I drink water. And I honestly think that a huge health issue in our country is all stemming from not what we eat, but what we drink, because you can ingest all this crappy stuff so much faster when you're chugging bottles of Gatorade and beer and all this stuff that is really bad for you. If I nibble on, some chocolate or something, it's a small amount. You can chug Gatorade for hours and you're just ingesting an incredible amount of bad stuff into your system, in my opinion. So I try to stick to water like almost exclusively.
Incredible health advice from Adam Levitan. I love it. What's your favorite all-time vacation?
Man, I love to travel. I've been to a ton of really incredible places. Probably the most fun trips that I've had go back to poker trips. Went to Prague for a poker tournament. Incredible city. Went to Copenhagen for a poker tournament. That was really awesome city. I would say one place I've been twice, which I don't go to many places twice. One place I've been twice because I loved it so much was Nice in the south of France. I mean, I think there's a direct flight now actually from New York to Nice. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Awesome place. Did my bachelor party in Rio, in Brazil, which was a wild scene. Highly recommend that. Although I haven't been there in, I don't know, when did I get married? 13 years ago or something like that. I've never been to Asia. I heard that's awesome, but yeah, I love traveling and stuff. So a lot of places for sure.
It's a great list. I love that. What are you most grateful for at this time?
Yeah, so much. I mean, I mentioned the thing about being able to work on something that I'd be doing anyways, right? That I think that's obvious. As I've gotten older and I've seen, people who are 30 something years old get diagnosed with cancer, and I've seen people struggle with all these kind of various illnesses. Like nothing means anything unless you have your health. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. And so I've been really fortunate to never really have anything bad happen to me in terms of health yet. And that's like incredible. I didn't do anything for that. It's just luck of the draw. I have not had any serious health issues. So I think if everyone just take a step back and be grateful that you have your health, it's just a great way to like start every day. Like, hey, I'm starting out ahead. I'm one of the people that is actually healthy.
Nice. Great answers. All of them are really awesome. Can you name some of the people that have had a big impact on you during your journey in the fantasy sports industry?
Yeah. Jordan Ranan, I met at this. I took a job with the Sports Network right out of college. This was 2004. Sports Network was like a wire service for sports. And after 3 months, they did layoffs or wanted to fire me or whatever. So they fired me. Jordan went out of his way. I was working with him there. Went out of his way to get me a job as like a agate clerk, which is like the lowest possible job at some crappy newspaper in the Pennsylvania area. And then he got a job at Metro Philadelphia as a sports editor and gave me a chance to write fantasy articles. That was the first time I ever had a fantasy article published. Jordan now covers the Giants for ESPN. I'm sure you guys know him. So that was like a big one to start. Greg Rosenthal gave me a chance at RotoWorld. Peter helped me, who I mentioned earlier. Peter helped me get the job at DraftKings, or the contractor job at DraftKings, and also wanted me to be a part. Him and Bales wanted me to be a part of the team at Fantasy Labs, which was a DFS startup in 2015. And then, yeah, just more recently, Evan and Taylor with all the ETR stuff have been, incredible. So yeah, I forever indebted to all those people and way more for sure.
That's awesome. What a journey. So much ahead of you. I'm excited for you and everything ahead. What piece of advice that you would give to someone who's aspiring to get more involved in the fantasy space and follow your footsteps?
Yeah, you have to do it now. Like we get emails all the time. I won my league, or look at my DFS results from the last year. I can create content. I can help you guys with projections. These days, there's no excuse not to just do it. If you think you can do it, start a YouTube. Build your own model and send it to us. Back test what you've done. Show us your show us what you can actually do. And we've changed our hiring process to actually do this, where we ask for resume, but that's not the most important thing. At the bottom of every job posting now, we ask you to do something that is related to the job. And so we hiring for NBA projections. We gave people like a little bit of data and said, how would you go about projecting minutes for these guys in their next game? And you get results like that. And so like with that NFL job we posted, or the data side job we posted, we posted like Brock Purdy's over under for longest pass in the Super Bowl is 28.5 yards. How would you go about solving that, with this information, and so you have to be able to actually do it, I think, now, instead of just say it, because there's no reason you can't start your own YouTube. You can't start your own podcast. You can't build your own model. So actually doing it makes a big difference. And then the thing that I tell people all the time is just being in the smallest niche possible. When I started covering or working on DFS stuff, it was a small niche. There weren't a lot of people talking about DFS. I became known as like the DFS guy. And it wasn't, I didn't really do it on purpose, because I just loved playing DFS right away. But it worked out that I kind of owned the niche, because people saw it as, he's not focused on football. He's not focused on fantasy football. He's not focused on anything except for DFS, NFL football. And like, that's how narrow I think you have to get these days to be really good at something. So yeah, get out there and do it, and be in as small a niche as you can would be my advice.
That's outstanding. I love it. Now, is there anything we haven't covered before we close things out here on this episode?
No, I think people are probably sick of hearing me talk already.
No, I think they tune into your solo pod because they want to hear you talk. So I think they'll love to hear some of the background behind your story, and obviously some of the quirky things when it comes to your interests and passions. I love it. Can you tell the viewers where to find you?
Yeah, all the work is on Establish the Run. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, which I presume you are, we do have a YouTube channel. If you search Establish the Run, and there's a bunch of content on there. It's all free on YouTube, and there's a bunch of content on there that doesn't hit the audio feed for those guys that are on the audio feed. And then, of course, Twitter. I think if you're serious about fantasy, people, I know there's varying opinions out there about Twitter. If you're serious about fantasy, you have to be on Twitter. I mean, that's where all the best information is. That's where all the first information is. And if you don't want to hear all the other noise that's out there on Twitter, create a list. Twitter has a list function. I use my list function every single day, because I don't want to hear the noise. I have people on lists that I actually want to hear what they have to say, and that's all I look at. And so if you create a list of the people you actually want to hear from, Twitter's actually a pretty enjoyable experience, in my opinion. So yeah, those would be the three that I would say.
There you go. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a thrill to have you on here. Best of luck moving forward. I can't wait to see what you got in store in 2024.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.